If you pray and still feel nothing, this video is not going to tell you to pray more. You know the feeling I'm talking about. You check the app for 40-something days without missing a prayer. You've read more Qur'an this year than most people you know will read in 5. Half the accounts you follow are practicing accounts. And somewhere underneath all of that consistency, there's a flatness you don't say out loud to anyone. No doubt, not some dramatic sin you're hiding. Just nothing. You go through the motions and you wait to feel something, and it doesn't come, and you tell yourself it will come next time. This isn't a video about a ritual you're missing. This is about a suffering you already recognize, but have never actually named, the quiet fear that you've gone numb, and you can't even remember the exact day it started. Here's the twist. This flatness isn't random, and it isn't proof you're doing Islam wrong. The Quran already described exactly what's happening to you. It even gave it a specific name, a word you've probably heard recited 100 times, without knowing what it was actually pointing at. Ibn Arabi has an answer for why this happens that has nothing to do with effort. He says the heart was never built to just feel things on command. It was built to reflect something. And what you're calling numbness is what happens when the reflecting stops. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why a fully practicing life can still rust from the inside, and there's one thing you can actually do tonight, before you sleep, to start scraping it off. Here's exactly where we're going. First, we'll look at why Allah chose a metallurgical word, rust, to describe what happens to your heart, and why that word choice was never poetic decoration. Then we'll look at the specific hadith that names the exact polish for this rust, and what that tells us about how the damage actually happens. Then Ibn Arabi is going to show you that your heart isn't a container that gets dirty. It's a mirror that stops reflecting. After that, we'll look at the sin nobody counts, the kind that rusts faster than any major sin, because you never even flag it as sin. Then, we'll look at a kind of shine that's more dangerous than the rust itself. And finally, I'll give you the exact nightly practice for scraping the rust off, before it hardens into something the Quran calls sealed. Here's the actual modern problem, and it's more specific than people aren't spiritual anymore. It's this: you've learned to mistake consistency for closeness, and you've learned to mistake the absence of guilt for the presence of sincerity. If you haven't sinned today, you assume you're fine. Nobody taught you that a heart can be completely fine by that measure and still be going dark. Before we go further, you should know who's actually diagnosing this. Ibn Arabi was a 12th century Andalusian scholar trained rigorously in Islamic law before he became known as Al-Sheikh Al-Akbar, the greatest master. He wasn't a poet writing vague comfort into verse. He built one of the most systematic accounts in Islamic intellectual history of what the heart is, what the self is, and how divine reality discloses itself to a human being. When Ibn Arabi talks about the heart, he's not being atmospheric. He's making a precise metaphysical claim. Here's his framework for this exact topic. The Arabic word for heart, qalb, comes from the root taqallub, to turn, to fluctuate. Ibn Arabi's reading of this is specific. A heart's health was never measured by how still or settled it is. It's measured by whether it can still turn toward what it's supposed to reflect. Rust, in his framework, is what happens when the turning stops, and the surface goes dull. There's a modern parallel worth naming here, and I'll only do this a few times in this video, because I don't want to reduce Ibn Arabi to a psychology footnote. Neuroscience has a name for what happens when your nervous system stops registering a repeated stimulus. It's called habituation. Your body literally down-regulates its response to something it's been exposed to too many times, without conscious processing. Spiritually numb worship is habituation wearing religious clothes. The acts keep happening. the registration stops. Here's what makes this different from most content you've watched on this topic. Most of it treats a dead heart as a discipline problem. You're not doing enough, so do more. This video is going to treat it as a perception problem. The question was never how much you're doing. The question is whether the mirror is still clear enough to reflect any of it back to you. Think of a man named Zaid, late 30s, hasn't missed Fajr in 7 years, genuinely, not exaggerating. People in his community describe him as serious about his deen, the kind of person younger guys ask for advice. Tonight he opens his prayer app before bed, sees the streak 47 days of every prayer on time and closes it. He sits on the edge of the bed for a second longer than usual, and an uncomfortable thought arrives uninvited. He cannot remember the last time he was in sujood and actually felt like he was talking to someone. Not the last time he said the words correctly, the last time it felt like a conversation. Does that sound familiar to you at all? Not the specifics of the shape of it. Ibn Arabi's insight here is built directly into the word qalb itself. He points to its root, taqallub, meaning to turn or to fluctuate, and draws out something most people miss. The heart's defining feature was never supposed to be stillness. It was supposed to be responsive. A heart in good condition turns toward what it's reflecting, the way a compass needle turns toward north, not because it's agitated, but because it's alive to what's actually in front of it. A heart that stopped turning isn't at peace. Ibn Arabi would say it's seized. Now here's the verse this entire video is built around. Surah al-Mutaffifin, verse 14. Kalla bal rana ala kulubihim makanu yaksibun. No, what they used to earn has covered their hearts. That word, ran, is not a generic word for stain or dirt. In classical Arabic it's a specific metallurgical term, the exact film that forms on the surface of iron when it's exposed to air and moisture over time. Allah didn't choose a word that means something was thrown onto the heart from outside. He chose a word that describes a chemical change to the surface itself, caused by ordinary exposure, accumulating without a single dramatic event. Picture a mirror left hanging in a damp room for months. Nobody splashed anything on it. Nobody scratched it. The room itself, the ordinary air around it, slowly changes the surface until, one day, you look into it, and the reflection is dull, blurred, unconvincing. That's the mechanism Allah is describing. Not an attack on the heart, an environment the heart sat in for too long, without maintenance. Modern psychology has a name for a version of this. It's called habituation. Researchers have found that when your nervous system is exposed to the same stimulus repeatedly without active, conscious engagement, it literally reduces its own response over time, as a kind of biological efficiency. Ibn Arabi described this same underlying mechanism 800 years before neuroscience existed. Except, he called it run building through ghafla, heedlessness. Science can tell you that this happens, and roughly how it happens in the nervous system. Ibn Arabi is the one telling you what it's actually for, not a verdict on your sincerity, but a signal that something in your relationship to the act has gone unattended. But here's what most people miss when they read this verse quickly and move on. Allah doesn't describe this rust as instant. He describes it as earning makanu yaksibun, what they used to earn, in the ongoing past tense. This isn't a heart struck down in one moment of major sin. This is a heart that accumulated its own condition, transaction by transaction, in a way so gradual that the person living inside it never felt a single dramatic turning point. Zaid didn't fail a test on Tuesday. He simply stopped noticing, one unnoticed sujood at a time, until 47 days of consistency, sat on top of a mirror that had quietly stopped reflecting anything back. That should unsettle you a little. It's supposed to. Because if rust doesn't require a dramatic sin to build, then the absence of dramatic sin in your life proves nothing about the state of your heart. Your heart didn't go numb overnight. It went numb one uncounted moment at a time. But if the rust builds this quietly, inside acts you're already doing correctly, what does that actually look like in a single day? That's exactly where we're going next. Think of a university student named Mariam. 22. She's proud genuinely, reasonably proud that she hasn't missed a single Fajr this semester, even through exams. Tonight she's lying in bed at 2 in the morning, phone in hand, and she scrolls past a photo of a friend's new apartment, new job, new life that looks better organized than hers. A flicker of comparison passes through her chest. She closes the app, she gets up, she prays Fajr, on time, every movement correct, and she is completely somewhere else the entire time. Ibn Arabi's insight here goes a full level deeper than what we just covered. Rust, in his framework, is not primarily built by dramatic disobedience. It's built by ghafla heedlessness, the heart's failure to stay present to what it's doing while it's doing it. And here's the uncomfortable part: a technically valid prayer, performed in total heedlessness, still adds its own thin layer of film to the mirror. The prayer counted. The rust still formed. There's a hadith worth knowing here, recorded in variant chains, including al-Bayhaqi's collection. On faith, the Prophet is reported to have said that hearts rust the way iron rusts, and when he was asked what removes that rust, he said, the remembrance of death and the recitation of the Qur'an. Scholars differ on how strong the chain of this particular narration is, but the teaching inside it lines up precisely with what the Qur'an already told us in Surah al-Mutaffifin. This isn't a random metaphor invented later. It's naming the same disease the Qur'an already diagnosed, and naming its specific medicine. Think about a knife that gets used every single day, chopping, cutting. Constant contact, but is never wiped down, never sharpened, never maintained between uses. The daily use doesn't prevent the rust. In some ways it accelerates it, because moisture and use without maintenance is exactly the condition rust needs. That's the correction to a mistake almost everyone makes. You assume that doing the act protects you from the rust. Ibn Arabi is telling you the act itself can be the very surface the rust forms on, if there's no maintenance happening underneath it. But that's only half of what's actually being said here. Teaching 1 established that rust accumulates without you noticing. This goes further. It accumulates inside the acts of worship themselves. Which is exactly why just pray more has never actually fixed this feeling for you. You already know this. You've tried adding more without addressing the mechanism, and the flatness came back within days. Here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, so sit with this for a second. If you did an honest count of a single day, not your sins, your unexamined moments, the flicker of comparison during Fajr, the reflexive phone check between rakats mentally, the prayer said while half drafting a text in your head, the dhikr your mouth performed while your attention was 3 tasks ahead, these outnumber your major sins by a margin that isn't close. Thousands to 1, easily, in an average week. And each one leaves its own faint film, precisely because none of them ever get flagged as anything at all. You'd never write sin next to any of them in a self-assessment. That's exactly why they're the more dangerous kind. The rust isn't building in your bad moments, it's building in your unexamined ones. If that's true, if the danger is inside the very acts that are supposed to be protecting you, then what is the heart actually for, underneath all this? That's the real question Ibn Arabi wants you to sit with next. Think of an older man, Uncle Rashid, 61 years old, who has led the neighborhood Dhikr circle every week for over a decade. People arrive early just to sit near him. One night, mid-recitation, in the middle of a phrase he's said probably tens of thousands of times in his life, something close to panic moves through him. He notices that his mouth is moving, correctly, rhythmically, beautifully even, and his heart is completely silent. And he can't say for certain how long it's been that way. This is the part most Islamic content never actually reaches, because it requires understanding what Ibn Arabi thought the heart was for in the first place. Not a container that holds good deeds like a bank account, but something closer to an instrument built for a very specific function. For Ibn Arabi, the heart's ultimate purpose is to be a locus of tajalli, divine self-disclosure. In his framework, worked out in detail across the Fusus al-Hikam, a polished heart doesn't generate light of its own. It reflects light the way a mirror doesn't create the image of the sun. It simply makes the sun visible somewhere it otherwise couldn't be seen. Rust doesn't destroy the heart's capacity to do this. Nothing about the mirror's underlying nature has changed. Rust destroys its clarity. The sun is still there. The mirror has simply stopped showing it. You'll find a saying repeated throughout Sufi literature that the heavens and the earth cannot contain the divine, but the heart of a believing servant can. It's worth knowing that this specific phrase doesn't carry a solid chain back through the classical hadith collections, so treat it as a teaching point rather than a citable hadith. But the structural claim inside it is exactly what Ibn Arabi is describing about the heart's theological capacity. It isn't a small vessel with a small purpose. It's built to hold something enormous when it's clear enough to do so. Picture a telescope lens fogged over by your own breath on a cold night. The stars haven't moved. The telescope isn't broken. There is fog sitting directly between you and something that was there the entire time, unchanged, waiting. He is something you've probably never actually considered, and it's the reason this condition is so hard to catch. A rusted heart doesn't feel empty. It feels normal. That's the actual danger hiding inside all of this. Rust doesn't announce itself as an absence you can point to. It quietly redefines what normal spiritual feeling is supposed to be for you, until you genuinely stop expecting anything more than what you currently feel, which is very close to nothing. And here's the counterintuitive part that should genuinely surprise you. The people most at risk of a fully rusted heart are not the openly negligent ones. The person who's honest that they're struggling, who feels the friction of their own inconsistency. The people most at risk are the consistently fine ones. Uncle Rashid, leading Dhikr for a decade without missing a week. Because consistency without inspection is precisely the condition. Rust needs to spread completely undetected. Nobody checks a mirror they've already decided is clean. A rusted mirror doesn't know it's rusted. It just stops showing you anything worth noticing. So if the danger isn't really about how much you're doing, if a person can look completely put together on the outside and be quietly going dark on the inside, there has to be something even sharper going on underneath consistency itself. Most people stop here. Ibn Arabi goes further, and this next part is the part almost nobody wants to hear. Think of a woman named Hafsa, 29, who just finished a complete reading of the Qur'an during a busy month, genuinely proud of having pulled it off around a full-time job. She posts about it. The likes start coming in, the comments, the masha Allahs. And for half a second, before she can even catch it happening, a warmth moves through her chest that has absolutely nothing to do with the words she just spent a month reading, and everything to do with being seen reading them. Here is the same self that used to want status at work, in school, in how a room perceived it, and it has simply put on a different outfit. The nafs didn't disappear the day you started practicing seriously. It just found a new category to perform in. The same hunger for recognition that used to want a promotion now wants to be known as consistent, disciplined, spiritually serious. It hasn't changed its nature. It changed its costume. Ibn Arabi's warning here is precise, and it's the sharpest turn in this entire video. He describes ubudiyya servanthood, the very state of worship itself, as capable of becoming a veil, a hijab. The exact moment the worshipper's attention quietly shifts from the one being worshipped to the fact of their own worshipping. A heart can look freshly polished from the outside, active, disciplined, visibly devoted, while a new and much subtler layer of rust is forming directly underneath that shine: self-satisfaction. There's a psychological mechanism worth naming here, and I'll only do this once more in this video. Researchers studying social reward have found that public recognition, likes, comments, being seen as consistent, activates the same reward circuitry as other forms of social validation, reinforcing the behavior that earned it regardless of the internal state behind it. Your brain doesn't distinguish praised for sincerity from praised for performance. The reward feels identical either way. Ibn Arabi described this exact confusion 8 centuries ago as the self mistaking the veil of ubudiyya for its substance. Science can tell you that the reward circuitry doesn't discriminate. Ibn Arabi tells you what to actually do the moment you notice it happening. Here's why this resolves everything we've built so far. Teachings 1 through 3 painted rust as a problem of neglect, heedlessness, drift, unattended acts. This flips it entirely. The deeper danger was never only under practice. It's practice that has quietly started performing for itself. Neglect rusts a dull mirror. Self-admiration ujub rusts a shiny one, and that kind is far harder to detect, precisely because it looks identical to the cure. Here's the moment I actually want you to sit with. The streaks, the trackers, the public Katam posts, all genuinely good tools, all capable of building real consistency, and all capable of becoming the exact mechanism that hides rust from its own owner, because a heart that has become proud of its own polish has already stopped checking itself for spots. Ask yourself honestly right now, when's the last time you felt that flicker of warmth after being seen doing something good, and instead of catching it, you simply enjoyed it? Some hearts don't need to be cleaned. They need to stop admiring themselves in the mirror. Most people stop here, satisfied with a tidy lesson about humility. Ibn Arabi goes one level further than that, and it's going to overturn something you probably assumed was the whole point of this video. Here's the assumption sitting underneath everything we've covered so far. Sin causes rust, so fewer sins should mean a cleaner heart. And eventually, if you're careful and consistent enough, you reach a heart with no rust at all, a finished, permanent state of polish. That assumption is true as far as it goes, and it's incomplete in a way that matters. Allah never actually promises a heart that reaches zero rust and simply stays there. Look at how dynamic the Qur'an's language about the heart consistently is. Rabbana la tuzi qalbana, our Lord, do not let our hearts deviate, from Surah Al-Imran. That's not a prayer for a heart that's already arrived somewhere fixed. It's a prayer said by people whose hearts are still turning, asking that the turning stay oriented correctly. The turning itself remembers taqallub. The very root of the word qalb is the sign of life. It was never the flaw to be eliminated. Here's what mainstream content on this topic almost never says. A heart that reports zero spiritual friction, zero moments of noticing its own heedlessness, zero discomfort at its own numbness, is not necessarily the cleanest heart in the room. It may be the one whose rust has progressed far enough that it can no longer register itself at all. That quiet unease you feel, the one that made you click on this video in the first place. That discomfort is not evidence you're failing. It's closer to a pulse than a symptom. It means there's still a clear patch on the mirror capable of noticing the fog. Ibn Arabi's picture, worked out across the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, is closer to a mirror being wiped continuously, not a mirror wiped once and stored away finished. And here's his most challenging point in this entire framework. Stillness itself is ambiguous. A heart can be still because it is alive and genuinely at rest inside Dhikr. Or it can be still because it has calcified and simply stopped fluctuating altogether. From the outside, these two states can look identical. Same calm face, same steady practice. Same description from other people of someone who seems so at peace. What actually distinguishes them is whether the heart still notices itself. The presence of quiet unease at your own heedlessness is closer to evidence of life than evidence of failure. So here's the reframe of everything you've heard up to this point in the video. The goal was never a heart that reaches a permanent, rust-free, finished state. It was never realistic, and it was never actually the promise. The goal is a heart that keeps catching its own rust early enough to keep turning a maintenance relationship, not a finish line. The mirror was never meant to be wiped once. It was meant to be wiped for the rest of your life. If the goal is ongoing maintenance rather than a finished cure, then you need something concrete enough to actually do tonight, not a mood, a specific action. That's exactly what's next. Here are 3 specific things, tied directly to what we've covered, that you can start tonight. The first is what I'd call the nightly rust audit, and it ties directly back to the sin nobody counts from teaching 2. Before you sleep, name one specific moment of heedlessness from today, not a vague global statement like I wasn't focused today, but the exact moment. I was scrolling during the khutbah's final dua, or my mind left halfway through Asr and never came back. Say it out loud or write it down. The mechanism here is straightforward, naming a single specific instance, rather than a foggy global self-criticism, keeps your reflective attention engaged instead of letting your mind slide into avoidance. It keeps the heart in the habit of catching its own rust in real time, which, after everything we've covered, is genuinely the entire game. The second ties back to teaching 1 to say your Istighfar and your daily Dhikr out loud, even just barely audibly, instead of running it silently in your head. There's a psychological mechanism worth naming here as the third and final bridge in this video. Verbalizing something by actually hearing your own voice adds an extra layer of sensory encoding that silent repetition doesn't give you. Your attention has to include both producing the sound and hearing it, which makes it measurably harder for your mind to drift somewhere else at the same time. Ibn Arabi would say this is simply giving the taqallub, the turning, an actual physical anchor to turn around. The third is what I'd call the credit redirect, and it ties directly to teaching 4, the shine that's more dangerous than the rust. The instant you notice that flicker of warmth after a good deed, after a khatam, a long night prayer, a fast nobody else knows about redirecting the credit in a single silent sentence before the feeling has time to settle in. This wasn't me. This was tawfiq enabled from Allah. The mechanism is timing. You're interrupting the self-congratulation loop at the moment it starts, before it has a chance to quietly rewrite how you remember the deed itself. None of these require more time than you already have tonight. They require noticing. Go back to Zaid, from the very beginning of this video. Same 47-day streak. Same edge of the bed. But tonight, instead of closing the app and feeling that familiar nothing, He does the rust audit and names the exact moment his mind left his prayer today, out loud, alone in his room. And for the first time in what feels like weeks, he notices something. Not a huge feeling, not tears, not certainty, just a pulse. A single patch of mirror still catching light somewhere underneath everything else. That's the transformation this whole video was pointing toward. The numbness was never proof that he'd failed at Islam. It was proof that rust had spread quietly through an otherwise disciplined life, and the fact that he can still notice it, still feel the discomfort of it, means the mirror isn't gone. It was only covered. Allah didn't ask you for a heart that never rusts. He asked you for a heart that never stops checking. Before you go, sit with this question honestly, and actually answer it if you can. Think of the last time you did something religious completely on autopilot. A prayer, a Dhikr, a Qur'an page. Can you name the exact moment your heart left the room before your body did? Not generally. The exact moment. Comment below if you're willing to be honest about it, not for anyone else to see, but because naming it is the first wipe of the mirror.